How would you describe Italian culture? What are the big cultural dimensions or the big pieces of our Italian culture that kind of bring us together as a people? We had mentioned things like food, St. Joseph, right? What's the rhythm of Italian-American life? We live in a world of deep uprootedness, of frenetic irrationality and technological distraction. In this world, the family is under attack, and the parish church has transmogrified from being a fountain that feeds and nourishes the village, as Pope St. John the 23rd remarked in both his Journal of a Soul and the documents of the Second Vatican Council, namely Lumen Gentium, to a place where seemingly ships pass in the night. I had the chance to talk about all this with a good friend of mine, Liz. Liz and I met a year ago in Champion, Wisconsin, on the course of a pilgrimage from the National Shrine of St. Joseph to the only apparition site of Our Lady on U.S. soil to be recognized by the Vatican. During that hike, Liz and I became fast friends, and we have been ever since. At St. Mary of the Visitation Parish in Elm Grove, Liz and I sat down across from one another to have a free-ranging conversation on youth ministry, the role of the parish, the human family, the human person, and the relationship between content and relationship in ministry. Take a look at our conversation. Thank you, Liz, so much for this time together and an opportunity to enter into
Thank you for having me here, John Paul.
As I look around where we are, I'm reminded of a lot of things of home. This place for me is filled with memories. I can look out there and see the pew where I sat in the second grade when I received First Holy Communion. I'm reminded that my brother was ordained on these very steps. My sister was married here at the bottom of these steps. My parents renewed their 40th anniversary wedding vows here. My nephews were baptized over there. I made my first confession right in that confessional over there, which I think is now a janitor's closet. But this place is definitely filled with memories for me. So for me, it's a matter of coming home. What is your story? How did you end up here at St. Mary's?
It's an interesting, convoluted story because I was not a member here, but I was volunteering as a catechist for many years, back to the day and age when St. Joe's and St. Mary's was a combined kind of parish unity. Let's share a catechist. Let's share, our ministries together. And so I was doing K-5 over at St. Joe's. And when that split and it was just St. Mary's and St. Joe's separated, I joined St. Mary's ministry team and enjoyed doing both K-5 through 5th grade catechesis and then doing teen ministry too. So I was kind of doing a little bit of both at the beginning. And then towards, a little bit later, I became more interested in the teen ministry and started to get more involved in that. So that's how I basically got introduced to the parishes through the ministry. And then my brother, Iggy and Nancy Smetic, they're parish members here, and their two sons, Danny and Sam, both baptized here. I decided this is a great parish, and I should become a member. And so coming to Mass with them and joining the parish was kind of a natural fit. I had not only my close family members here, but then became part of the St. Mary's family.
It's probably true that everybody has their own story about how they came here and how they arrived and became a member of our parish community. But one thing that unites our stories together is that our ancestors were from the same small town in Sicily, Santo Stefano de Camastra. Who would have thought that 100 years later, you and I would be members of the same parish community in Elm Grove, Wisconsin, of all places? It's something I think truly unique. I'm not aware of other members of the parish, maybe there are, who are from Santo Stefano, but that's something that unites us, and certainly our Italian culture is something that brings us together. You and I were talking about what that means for us. How would you describe Italian culture? What are the big cultural dimensions or the big pieces of our Italian culture that kind of bring us together as a people. We had mentioned things like food, St. Joseph, right? What's the rhythm of Italian American life?
It's very beautiful in the sense that it's integrated with the faith. And this is a gift because the more I realize how many families didn't have that experience, I understand more completely how my spirituality developed so differently, from the sense of gathering with the immediate and extended family members was a ritual, and celebrating not only our personal birthdays, but birthdays of the church, Pentecost, and, celebrating St. Joseph feast day, making a special cake with the statue of St. Joseph on top, and saying prayers together with my cousins and aunts and uncles. It was beautiful. And as children, we enjoyed getting together like that, not only just to see each other, but we knew what was coming. Mm-hmm. It was festive, it was spiritual, it was holy, and we left feeling loved and a part of something much bigger. Mm-hmm. And even, before you could walk, the little babies were being held up, to the Blessed Mother. And, we would say prayers and consecrating the baby to Blessed Mother, and saying rosaries and devotions for family members who were feeling sick, or attending the weddings that were days, not just, one day. Yep. You started like 3 days in advance, yep, and 3 days after, and you were still celebrating. And it was all centered around the faith. Yes. And the understanding that there was so much more to this life than whatever else we were going to be doing. If it didn't have something grounded in our faith, why would we be doing it? Mm-hmm. That's how we lived. And going to St. Rita and St. Pompey Parish in the 3rd Ward is where we kind of grew up. And that 3rd Ward district, which was all Italian at the time when my first generation from Ellis Island grandparents came, a lot of processions and a lot of veneration in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and knowing that getting together again with the parish family was also important. It wasn't only, the related cousins and aunts. It was this parish community that we were kind of responsible to, committed to be present for these things, mm-hmm. So bar of, being sick in bed and not being able to get up, we went to everything, every devotion, every procession, and it wasn't ever a question, and my grandmother and grandfather were always the ones at the front of the group, mm-hmm. leading us all in, as shepherding us into the parish, and then getting lost in the parish membership and getting to know people. A lot of them didn't speak English, including my grandparents. And maybe I understood a few words here and there. I didn't ever really learn, the Sicilian language perfectly. But at least we know we were part of this family, even though we couldn't communicate. And it was a beautiful parish experience that led me into staying so close to the parish, mm-hmm. and wanting to be involved as a catechist.
Mm-hmm. You and I both know that culture, which I experienced too, although in a different way, I suppose, because I was coming into the world at a time when that culture was already beginning to fade, mm-hmm. and to pass out of existence, sadly. But you and I both know that culture is under attack and faces different challenges. It's in a mode of crisis. How would you articulate, or what would you see as some of the challenges that confront the integrity of the family, for example? Or, for example, we talked about it before, the sacredness, if you will, of the family dinner hour. What are some of the challenges that we face that arise in your unique work with children and young adults in the ministry that you do here at St. Mary's? What are some of those challenges?
You said it, perfectly, in the sense that, the family is the core of where we learn about Jesus, and truly the first and most responsible experience in life in dealing with God and the faith. Those practices are ingrained in you. Mm. And today, well, as you know, the families have so much going on. My mom wasn't working. She was at home. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, both parents probably are working, not all, but a lot. There's so many outside interests beyond the family. Being with friends sometimes is more important than being at home with the family. Mm-hmm. And that would never fly at home. Right. My parents were very, my father was more Czechoslovakian and Polish, and so his background, the same thing, very family-oriented, 13 brothers and sisters, not a small family, and my mother, 6 children. It was, we all chipped in and we took care of, the home. We all were responsible for making sure the food was on the table, and afterwards we took care of taking the dishes and cleaning up afterwards. It wasn't ever such that you couldn't be at dinner. There was no reason for you not to be. Well, as today, children want to be involved in so many things, like extracurriculars or even excel in academics. And so, doing extra work and homework and taking special and advanced classes, and nothing wrong with all those things. But what does happen is the breakdown of that sense of faith and community within the family. Mm-hmm. And so when the children come to class or they're in a program for preparation for a sacrament, it's very episodic. It's you can't possibly, transfer that sense of faith and relationship and fellowship within the family within an hour and a half encounter that you have with them. So we have this huge gap between relational experience of Christ and encountering Him within each other and the love of the family and within your parish as your family. Mm-hmm. And just seeing Mass as something we do on Sunday for an hour and then we go about our business. So it isn't the center any longer of why we're here and what we're doing.
Would it be fair to say, perhaps, that part of the challenges that families, that young people face today, is everything seems stacked in a way to separate the child or the young person apart from the family, and to render the child or the young person as an individual who can stand self-sufficiently on her or his own, making her or his own decisions that maybe don't even take into account the family or the traditions of the family. Would that be a fair assessment, in your opinion?
It's hard for me to know exactly what's going on inside families today. I mean, my observation within my own family, because we carry forward what we've learned, it doesn't work that way. Right. But I do, in conversations with parents, have, an awareness that states something towards that. Well, she really wants to do this. Mm-hmm. So volleyball is going to take its precedence over making this confirmation, meeting. And again, no judgment on my part. It's that's how they're being formed and saying, okay, this is where you're putting most of your energy in life right now. God understands you're not going to make it to this confirmation session, and somehow, you'll make this up. Mm-hmm. That would never fly back in the day where, it's great to have talent in all these sports, and it'd be wonderful if everybody made it to the NBA. Right. But let's face it, these are accomplishments and they're gifts that they're given by God, and they should be utilizing them to their best abilities. Again, however, where is the priority, and at what point does the family start to lose its centeredness around
we can look,
faith?
For example, at the family dinner table. Yeah. Right? It's not this case with every family.
No, of course not.
But with some families, you can see there isn't even a dinner hour. Maybe everybody in the household eats individually. Or if they are gathered around a table, they come and go. They're distracted by a blaring television or a smart device or something that takes away from the togetherness of the family at that one shared meal. And it's interesting because if we look at business and professional life, especially for those who might work in a large multinational corporation or a large conglomerate business, the life that's lived there, it seems on the outside, and maybe you can speak to this, is it becomes very, very difficult to balance family life and business life, and that the culture of a company or of a multinational corporation can be such that all of your energies are going in the direction of that business versus reserving something of yourself to be shared with your family at home. I know that you came from, before you arrived here at St. Mary's, you were working for GE. I had a previous life as a journalist, and so we have some shared stories about what that kind of culture is like. But can you speak to that, about what that's like?
Well, I think it's an important aspect when you look at young adults in the parish, freshly graduated from college or later in their career like I was, where you've developed your abilities and skills God-given towards a particular goal. And you work so hard, grade-wise, studying, all of that, to achieve, a certain amount of success. So it plays in your mind that you start to measure your worth by whether or not you've achieved those goals. And I guess those are good and healthy things to have to a certain extent. However, when it becomes like it did for me, a question of integrity, where things were being done for the wrong reasons, and I'm a part of that, or I'm not sure it's really a healthy environment when you're working around the clock and then you have nothing left to give when you're home, and I think, the awareness comes through the Holy Spirit, a real strong tap on the shoulder for me, when my older brother had gotten very ill, and it was like, what am I doing? I'm traveling all over the world, making lots of money, being held in esteem because of the clinical accomplishments we're making in the area we were developing, definitely changing, if you would, some of the technology that would be available for cardiac disease in children, and it just felt really important and good. But in the meantime, this life, this parish, the family at home was suffering, And again, when my older brother got really ill, I decided, okay, this is the wake up call I needed. It's time to accomplish my goals at this company well and above. It was like 3 years. It was the hardest 3 years of my life. And then the next 4 years was actually the way to take out what we had developed. And during those 4 years is when I started to notice the issues and realize that this may not be the best fit for someone who really, holds in high esteem who Christ is, and things that were being done that shouldn't have been done, kind of thing.
And ironically, it's when we arrive at those moments, perhaps of crisis, or those larger-than-life moments, when a loved one is very ill, when we turn to this place, we turn to the parish community, we turn to our relationship with our Lord, we turn to the sacraments, we return to the family. In your work with children and young adults, because, correct me if I'm wrong, you work with babies all the way up through high school, right? Or
K-5 through 4th grade and then high school.
Okay. So how do you work with a young person, preparing them to live a life that's centered on prayer, recourse to the sacraments, that helps them to live in a community of faith, like the parish, the family, certainly, that helps them to orient their life in the direction of God, of Christ? What do you look for in a good youth ministry program? Or what is it that you try to offer so that you form the person who lives their life Catholically, if I can create that word, right? Or lives their life in a way that's steeped in Eucharistic gratitude for the family that has come before, the traditions that they have received, the gift of grace that comes to them through the sacraments. How do you prepare children for that life?
I think, we go back to our earlier point, within the hour or hour and a half that we have with children and teens, we're not going to make a world of impact, unfortunately, and I realize that. So we look for content, first of all, that's in line, of course, with what the teachings of the Catholic Church are. And then the publishers that we use are all approved, by the archdiocese of Milwaukee. So we know that, we're utilizing the right materials, the right books, and the right references. Catechists are brought in, and, basically made sure that, we're all talking to that same script. So it isn't, my own belief is, we're really sticking close to what our faith is. We integrate all of the traditions, whether it be going to reconciliation, attending the rosary, doing novenas, or going to the Blessed Sacrament and praying in the Adoration Chapel. So we take all of the richness of the Catholic faith and we bring it within that time period that we have with them, and make sure that they're experiencing the faith and not only talking about it, and encountering Christ in those experiences. So when you walk into the church, this is a very sacred place. He's right here. God is here. He's present, and this is a very holy place. And so when I walk into this space versus maybe the parish atrium or outside, I should have a different persona. I should be more reverent. Jesus wants us to be friendly with each other and have fellowship and reach out and, how are you doing? Good to see you. And nothing wrong with doing those things. But if you're being inattentive and running around, not genuflecting, prayer, blah, 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 not really putting it into your heart and then to Christ, we're missing something. And so then it goes back again to how you come into the faith, and that comes from the family. So we're spending a lot more time, talking with the parents in regards to do this at home if you can. Try to say a decade of a rosary every day. Put a specific petition to this decade, maybe for someone in your family or for a friend or a neighbor that that needs prayers. Tie it to something that's meaningful to you, so that when you're saying those Hail Marys, you're not just kind of saying the words. You're really saying that from your heart. I really want this prayer to be offered to Blessed Mother such that she can take it and perfect it and bring it to Jesus for me.
I'm grateful to you that you're here in our parish and that we have people like you. And I'm really touched by what you said about teaching reverence and piety, because that seems to be something that we lack sorely in our world, and recognizing that there are places where the presence of God is intense, certainly before the Blessed Sacrament, and preparing children to recognize the need for reverence and piety in their life as anchoring elements, if you will. It looks like we're already out of time. But thank you, Liz, so much for this conversation. We could talk for hours.
Right.
But I'm so grateful.
Thank you, John Paul.
Thank you.